You lie awake next to him. His breathing is steady. His arm rests across your waist like an anchor, and yet you feel adrift. He says you're everything he's ever wanted. He calls you his home, but something in you knows, if he hadn't met you, he would still be floating freely, untethered, unwilling. And you ask yourself, why you? Why now? Why not her? But that question isn't just about you. It's about all of us. Those of us who are chosen, and those of us who are not. And Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, whispered an answer not in romantic terms, but in symbols, shadows, and archetypes. He didn't write love letters. He mapped the unconscious. And in that dark terrain, he found the mechanisms of human devotion. Why a man will risk everything for one woman, and yet vanish silently from another. It begins always with the shadow. The shadow isn't a ghost, though it haunts us. It's everything we disown, every urge we repress, every fear we bury, every desire we call unacceptable. For a man, the shadow might be his vulnerability, his hunger for chaos, his secret envy, his ache to surrender. He doesn't want to see it, so he projects it, often onto her. You've seen it before. He falls for the woman who dazzles him with rebellion, sexuality, danger, the one who makes him feel alive. But something goes wrong. He idolizes her, then punishes her. He adores her, then abandons her. Why? Because when a man hasn't made peace with his own shadow, the woman who embodies it becomes both goddess and threat. She wakes up his unconscious, but he's not ready to meet himself, so he leaves. Here lies the paradox Jung knew well. The people we desire most intensely are often the ones we are psychologically unequipped to handle. And so men leave the ones who wake them up, and commit to the ones who make them feel safe, or so it seems. But what if the woman he commits to also wakes him up, but in a different way? Here's what Jung taught us. Within every man lies the anima, the archetype of the feminine. Not just a fantasy of femininity, but the spiritual blueprint of what woman means to him. She's more than flesh. She's the symbol of his soul's longing. Some women trigger the anima, others don't. So why you? Why does he stay? Why does he choose you, not her? Not because you're prettier, or more agreeable, or available, but because you mirror his individuation, the process of becoming whole. You reflect back to him the parts of himself he is finally ready to face. And this is the secret most miss. It's not about compatibility. It's about psychological timing. When a man is finally brave enough to walk into the labyrinth of his own psyche, he stops looking for a woman who completes the illusion and starts seeking the one who cracks it. He leaves her not because she isn't worthy, but because she reflects a version of himself he hasn't made peace with. She becomes the stage where his unconscious projects its battles, and it's terrifying. But with you, something different happens. You don't seduce his persona. You challenge it. You don't flatter his ego. You unsettle it. You don't represent escape. You represent transformation. And he stays because, for the first time, he realizes he no longer wants to run. Still, you must ask, how do you know you're not just another projection? That's the danger, because the anima can deceive. Jung warned that if a man doesn't consciously integrate his anima, he'll continue to see women not as they are, but as extensions of his own psychic material. This is why many men think they've found the one, over and over again, only to recoil, ghost, or implode. It's not the woman that changes. It's the mask cracking under the weight of unconscious material. But when a man finally begins his descent into therapy, into grief, into silence, he stops idealizing. He starts seeing. He sees that commitment isn't the opposite of freedom. It's its crucible. He sees that intimacy isn't softness. It's violence against the false self. And so he begins to choose not with his fantasies, but with his fate. And fate is always psychological. If you want to understand why he commits to you and not her, you must look not at your differences, but at the story within him that needed to be rewritten. You became the page, not because you were easier, softer, or more convenient, but because you were aligned with the chapter he was finally willing to write. And this leads to the most uncomfortable truth of all. Commitment is not a decision. It is a reflection of a man's inner readiness. No matter how good you are, how giving, how stunning, You cannot awaken what he has vowed to keep asleep. You can't save him. You can only stand where the light meets his shadow and hope he's willing to see. So many women live their lives trapped in the question, why wasn't I enough for him to stay? But Jung would offer a radical reframing. It was never about being enough. It was about being a mirror, and some mirrors arrive too soon. Because the man who left her didn't leave her. He left the part of himself she revealed. But he commits to you because in your presence, he meets the version of himself he's been dying to become. And that's not romantic, that's alchemical. He doesn't stay because you make him feel whole. He stays because you challenge him to become whole. And you sense the weight of it. The gravity of being the woman he's finally ready to face himself for. It's exhilarating and terrifying because you know now. This has nothing to do with games or timing or effort. It's deeper than desire. It's destiny. You're not the first woman he's loved, but you're the first he's stayed for. And in the quiet moments, the ones that feel too still, too raw, you can almost hear it. The friction between who he was and who he is becoming. He used to chase women who shimmered with danger, who evoked lust but not longing, who pulled him out of himself but never deep into himself. And when you came along, you didn't offer escape, you offered confrontation. Not with you, but with himself. And that, Jung would say, is the work of the anima. You might think the anima is simply his feminine side. It's more than that. It's the image of woman that lives in his unconscious, formed from every mother's glance, every girl's rejection, every song, dream, myth, and ache. She's not you, but she appears as you, or her, or someone else. He doesn't fall in love with you at first. He falls in love with what you reflect back to him. And here is the dilemma. Is he seeing you, or is he seeing the anima? Jung warned that until a man integrates his anima, he will fall into illusion after illusion. He will think he's found the perfect woman, only to discover she bleeds, breaks, breathes, contradicts. She is human. She shatters the myth. And when that happens, the fragile love he built on projection disintegrates. That's why he couldn't stay with her. She matched his fantasy, not his fate. But you didn't seduce the dream. You disrupted it. And at first, that may have frightened him. Perhaps he pulled away. Perhaps he tested you, doubted you, even tried to mold you into something softer, something more familiar. Because the real anima, the one that leads a man to his soul, is not docile. She is eros and fire. She awakens the self, not the ego. She whispers, "You are not who you think you are. Come find out who you've always been." And the men who aren't ready will run from that voice. But when he stops running, he begins to see that you are not the anima. You are the mirror she shines through. This is when commitment is no longer about compatibility. It's about congruence, alignment between inner world and outer choice. You are not just his lover. You are the external image of his internal transformation. Do you understand how sacred that is? Not everyone gets chosen this way. Not everyone is met after the projection ends. Some women become chapters in his myth. Others become footnotes in his delusion. But the one he stays with, she becomes his mirror in the individuation process. She is not idealized. She is realized. Yet that brings risk. Because the more deeply he sees you, the more deeply you see him. And here lies a vulnerability few men are trained to tolerate. Her he could charm. You, he must reveal himself to. Her he could impress. You, he must risk being destroyed by. Her he could possess. You, he must open to. And this is the crucible of the conscious relationship. The moment when he realizes that loving you demands not seduction, but surrender. Not the surrender of power, the surrender of persona. In the myth of Eros and Psyche, the god of love hides his face from Psyche. He tells her she must never look upon him. But when she does, when she lights the lamp and sees him truly, he flees. And she must go through hell to win him back, not with seduction, but with soul. This is not a romantic fairy tale. It's Jungian truth in disguise. When a man commits to you, it's because you've seen him, truly seen him. And unlike the others, you did not flinch. You did not recoil from his wounds. You didn't run from his rage. You held him without fixing. You stayed without shrinking. And in that sacred witnessing, he began to trust what no woman had ever shown him before. That he could be loved, not in pieces, but whole. Not just the charming parts, not just the competent mask, but the broken, bleeding myth of himself. And that's why he didn't commit to her. She may have loved him as he was, or perhaps who he pretended to be. But you loved the man he is still becoming. You didn't meet him where he was. You stood where he could be and waited. Not passively, not like a martyr, but like the Anima incarnate, fierce, wise, unshaken by his storms. Yet you must remember, just because he stays doesn't mean the work ends. If anything, now the real work begins. Because now that the Anima is no longer a fantasy, she becomes a guide. She demands depth, integrity, consciousness. She will not let him slip back into sleep, and neither will you. He may test this. He may retreat at times. The ego fears obliteration, but something in him knows, deep in the marrow of his myth, that to leave you now would be to betray not just love, but destiny. You didn't just meet a man. You met a man at the threshold of his transformation, and that's why he chose you. Not because you're safer, but because you were worth the fear. And her? She was not a mistake. She was a mirror too. One that came too soon, too fiercely, or too late. She showed him the chaos. You showed him the meaning inside it. You became the symbolic space where he could collapse and reconstruct. You didn't pull him out of the fire. You were the fire, and he finally stopped running from the burn. This is what Jung meant when he said that love is not about emotion. It is about transformation. The ego loves for comfort. The soul loves for growth. So why did he commit to you and not her? Because you were not a projection. You were a portal, and he stepped through. There's a silence that follows commitment. A silence most mistake for peace. But you know better. You feel it in his gaze when it lingers on you too long. You see it in the way he touches your back as if memorizing its shape. He is here, but part of him is still arriving. Because love, real love, the kind that exists after projection collapses, isn't a landing. It's a slow, sacred unraveling. He chose you, yes, but now he must learn how to stay. And staying is the hardest thing a man can do when he's lived his life. Running from himself? Carl Jung didn't romanticize union. He understood its terror. He called marriage, when it's conscious, a psychological crucifixion. Not because it destroys you, but because it destroys the masks you built to survive. This is the final reason he could not commit to her. She wanted the mask. You wanted the man beneath it. But now, you must both confront the question that haunts all conscious lovers. Can we love without illusion? In the mythic structure of Jung's thought, the Anima is never still. She is the bridge to the unconscious, and the unconscious is always shifting. If he tries to freeze you, as ideal, as savior, as security, you will begin to disappear. You will feel it like erosion, slow, subtle, the loss of fire, the dulling of your edge, because to be his mirror is holy, but to be only his mirror is a prison. So now you must ask yourself, are you still you? Or have you become an extension of his growth? Jung would urge individuation for both of you. Individuation isn't selfishness. It's the process of becoming a full self, separate yet whole, autonomous yet intimate. If he is truly ready, he won't pull you into his center. He will orbit with you, two psyches dancing, not fusing. Because love isn't fusion. It's the tension between two flames that choose not to consume each other. The Anima no longer rules him, but she still whispers. She whispers through the woman on the train who catches his eye, through dreams of unknown lovers, through longings he cannot name, not because he wants to leave you, but because the soul is always in motion, and desire is its language. So what do you do when you are no longer the mystery? You become something rarer, the witness. You let him grow without needing to be the cause. You let him ache without trying to fix it. You let the mystery return, not as seduction, but as space. This is the art of conscious love, presence without possession. And now he must do the same for you, because you too are more than the Anima in his myth. You are a soul on your own path. A woman with shadows he cannot soothe, wounds he cannot carry, dreams he must not interrupt. If you are to stay together, truly stay, it must be as equals, not as savior and seeker. He commits to you, not because you made him whole, but because you reminded him he already was, and in that space, your love must now evolve. No more mirrors, no more myths, just two people, brave enough to hold the tension of real relationship, the tension between autonomy and intimacy, the tension between knowing and mystery, the tension between soul and skin. You will fail sometimes, both of you. You'll see your old patterns resurface. He'll forget to listen. You'll forget to soften. He'll want to pull away. You'll want to control. But these are not signs of doom. They are echoes of the personas you've shed. And each time you resist the old reflex, each time you choose presence over performance, you become more real to each other, more dangerous, more divine. Because this is the terrifying gift of being truly seen. You can no longer hide. And isn't that why he didn't stay with her? She allowed him to keep the illusion. You demanded the truth. And now, in your presence, he has no choice but to become the man he was always meant to be. Not for you, not for love, but for himself. You are no longer the reason he stays. You are the reminder that love isn't a transaction. It's a transformation. And you must now let go of the need to be chosen again and again. Because if you still crave that reassurance, it means you've become attached to the role, the muse, the mirror, the meaning maker. But Jung would say this: you are not just the anima in his story. You are the self in your own. You are your own myth, your own mystery, your own mirror. And when two people see this in each other, when they stay not to be completed, but to witness the unfolding, that is when love stops being a dream and becomes a practice. So here you are, no longer wondering why he left her, no longer needing to prove why he stayed with you. You've seen the truth, not the fairy tale, not the projection. The truth, that love is not an answer. It's a riddle that deepens with time. That he didn't stay because you were perfect. He stayed because you were real. He stayed because you were the first woman who didn't try to be the dream. You became the door. And now, you both must walk through it, into the sacred unknown, not as halves seeking wholeness, but as whole selves choosing the wild, beautiful work of becoming more together.